It's springtime again, and my daughter brought her vehicle to me to have her summer wheels put on. But there were some nasty surprises hiding underneath those winter wheels. So join me today as I address some of those surprises. It seems that winter road salt has taken its toll on the brakes of this car. Since Mazda uses an electronic e-brake in the rear, I will show the procedure that is needed to replace the parts back here. I start by turning the ignition on by pressing the start button 2 times. Next, pushing the e-brake button down and holding it. With the accelerator pedal to the floor, I then push the start button 3 times. You can hear the electric motors retracting in the rear. To ensure the brakes are in maintenance mode, a warning light will appear on the dash. This tells me that I can continue without damaging any of the electronic e-brake components. These are the original rotors still on the car, and with just over 30,000 miles, there is some rust here. But I am noticing that the piston has been pushed out quite a bit. Further inspection reveals the uneven brake pad wear between the outboard pad and the inboard pad. The inboard pad has been worn down considerably. Now that the system is in maintenance mode, I can safely retract the piston back into the caliper. But before I do any parts removal, I'm taking the time to remove the surface rust off the caliper. I have plans for these later. I am being careful not to damage the rubber slide pin boots during this initial cleaning. I'm going to start by removing these caliper retention bolts. I'm using the 2-wrench method to remove these bolts and my 5-finger hammer. The front bolts proved to be too tight for me. I just ended up bruising my hand, so I resort to using my gentle persuader. I notice that these bolts have blue Loctite on them, so I will remember to use more when reinstalling them. With the first 2 bolts removed, I can now lift the caliper up and store it securely, ensuring not to twist or to put any stress at all on the rubber brake line. With the caliper removed, I can see that the outboard brake pad has 2 index pins fairly close together. I will remember this when installing the new pads. The extra fluid seen here is just wet brake cleaner. And here are the new pads with the index pins showing. The outboard pad has provisions for the fingers of the caliper, and the inboard pad has a space for the caliper piston. They look identical, so I know that this one is the outboard pad. There are 2 larger bolts used to secure the caliper bracket. Again, using my gentle persuader to remove them. I'm not going to be reusing these bolts, but more on that in a few minutes. So now the caliper bracket can be removed easily. Generally, uneven pad wear means stuck or frozen slider pins, but both of these are free and slide easily, so the uneven wear is caused by something else. I'm beginning the cleaning process using some water dispersant spray to soften the old grease in the slider pin bore. I follow the first step by using some brake clean spray. Now, I like to use this spray because it evaporates completely in just a few seconds. Here, I am removing the slider pin boots to inspect them for any damage. If they are cracked or have holes in them, water can make its way into the pins and prevent them from moving freely. During inspection, I spray them using my favorite silicone protectant. I'm ensuring that I clean both the outside and the inside of the boots by turning them inside out. This step will not be performed either at the dealership or by your local corner mechanic. Here is another step that will only be performed by the driveway mechanic. This is not necessary for reassembly, but I have other plans for these parts, so I am removing as much rust off this bracket as I can. As you can see by the green painter's tape, I'm preparing these parts for paint. My daughter's summer wheels are very open, and the brakes are visible through the spokes. Painting them will not only add some rust protection, but look far better in the long run. The paint I'm using is a high-gloss barbecue rust paint that will protect to over 1,000 degrees. These brackets will never get that hot. While the paint dries, it's time to remove the rotors. They are held on by these two retaining screws. This is no ordinary Phillips head bit. It is part of an old-fashioned impact screwdriver that allows fasteners to be loosened off easily or tightened back up. When using this tool with a mallet, it provides two advantages. It ensures that the bit will achieve a better purchase in the screw, preventing damage to the head from rounding over or camming out, and it also provides a small rotation to the left, loosening the fastener. The next step is just to remove the rotor. Normally they put up more of a fight, but this wasn't that bad. Oh, so here's the cause of the uneven pad wear. This rotor acted like a grinding stone, destroying the inboard pad. Even though the rotor came off easily, I will still take the time to grind the hub down with a soft brass brush to remove the fine rust. Here is another of the unnecessary steps. I'm using soap with a brush to remove the dirt buildup on the backing dust plate to prepare it for paint. This is another visible part that I wish to improve the look of. A floor protection pan, and a couple of light passes with the rust paint. I soon realized afterwards that I was doing this step right after painting the dust shield. I will do this step first on the right hand side. After taping up the rubber parts, I reapply the old rotor to use as a prop to support the caliper as I paint it. And I finally found a use for some of the flyers that get stuffed in my mailbox every week. The paint I'm using here is an engine paint designed for high heat areas. The color is a high gloss bronze color. Before installing the new rotor, I'm applying my favorite anti-seize paste to the hub. The thought here is to help out the next mechanic who works on this car. I'm noticing a small difference with the new rotors. There doesn't seem to be any provisions for the retaining screws. The front rotors did not have these screws from the factory, and in the past my Volkswagens did not use this system either, so I'm not worried about not replacing the screws. This small hole is used with a bolt to remove a stubborn, rusted-on rotor, but hopefully that won't be needed in the future. I'm attaching the rotor temporarily to aid the assembly of the next components. Having passed inspection, I reattach the rubber slide pin boots to the caliper bracket. Now this I learned from working on Volkswagens. They recommended replacing the caliper bracket bolts every time. Mazda doesn't seem to require this replacement, but for a few extra bucks per side, I figured I'd do this anyway. Again with the anti-seize for the next mechanic. And here, tightening those bolts. I used the higher torque spec due to the anti-seize. The inboard pad has the wear indicator tab on it, and long ago I was taught to orient this tab to the front of the car, so when used it will squeal when the car moves in reverse. The front brake setup is just the opposite, ensuring that the tab will squeal when the vehicle moves forward. Applying a small amount of silicone brake grease to the ears and springs of the new pad, remembering the spacing of the index pins for the outboard pad, and ensuring both pads slide easily in their slots. After applying a small amount of grease to the slider pins, I insert them back into their bores. Although not very clear in this shot, what I am doing is lifting the end of the rubber boot up with my fingernail to essentially burp the air trapped inside the slider pin holes. This freedom of movement is what I'm looking for. Here, I'm getting ready to push the caliper piston back into its cylinder. But before doing that, I have to visit the engine bay. Over the last few months, my daughter has been adding brake fluid due to the lower level caused by the excessive piston movement. I'm using my wife's turkey baster to lower this level again, so there is room for the fluid to return when the pistons are retracted. Can't wait for Thanksgiving this year. Many people will tell me that I can't use a clamp on the plastic housing for the e-brake, but this is my smallest woodworking clamp, so I'm not using too much pressure. No special tool, no twisting the piston, just straight back. A little more grease on the face of the piston and on the inside of the caliper fingers. And the whole assembly slides easily back together. And I even remembered to apply some blue Loctite on these bolts. Using the 2-wrench method, I tighten these retaining bolts to where they are nice and snug. When the right-hand side is done, I can then take the vehicle out of brake maintenance mode. Press the start button 2 times, accelerator pedal to the floor, lift up on the e-brake button, press the start button 3 times, listen for the motors to engage, and finally, verify that the maintenance mode light on the dash is out. So there was my take on a brake job on the CX-3. Not bad for a summer wheel change. Thank you for joining me today behind the red door.